share my screen. Hold on a sec. Can everybody see my spreadsheet right now? Pictures are always helpful too. I'm gonna go to my slides. I wanna show you guys some pictures of this asset too. It's always, I think, seeing it more than just seeing a spreadsheet will help it kind of come to life. Yeah, we'll actually just go to my investor update. So I did this investor update last week, and it's got a couple pictures of the asset in here. Let this load for a second. But I wanted to show you guys the layout. So this is in Southwest Wyoming. It was 45 units. I want to talk to you just really quickly how we found it, guys, and how we negotiated it. But let me just kind of show you the pictures. Here we go to this one. So this is the layout, guys. It's a multifamily asset. You can see it here. Okay, there were 8 different buildings and 45 units. Here's a quick picture of it. Guys, when we bought this, only 15 out of 45 units had a tenant in there, which a lot of people would be very scared of. I actually love it because it needed a bunch of work and we needed contractors. And luckily we have a great network of contractors. We actually brought these guys right here. Here's another picture. This is our crew. We actually brought from Houston. Actually, you guys will love this. I recruited this crew from one of my contacts in Sub 2. I reached out to the Houston community. I'm like, hey, somebody's got to have a good contractor reference that would love to get out of the Houston heat and move up to beautiful Wyoming in the summertime, which you can't beat. So these guys moved all the way up from Houston. The cool thing is I went and met them down in about 30 minutes from my house. I met them after a networking event one night, went and talked to them. And these guys got to meet this big guy here in the middle, Hector, got to meet him. And literally we talked about the project. He was looking for a job, and the next, I think 2 weeks later, he drove probably 1,500 miles to Wyoming. And these guys have been working ever since. So this was a big reason why we were able to do a big deal like this, is we had confidence in the contractors. And kind of going back to the deal now, I'll show you guys the reason why I was able to, because it's all about problems, right? All of us are solving problems. This lady's problem was she couldn't find contractors, right? This property needed a lot of work, and she was going, in this small town, she was going through contractors and they were either way overpriced or they didn't show up. I mean, what's new, right? That's kind of the world of contracting. It's hard, right? But we have in-house people. So I'm like, hey, I've got the guys to fix this up, but it needs a lot of work. So I was able to negotiate this to kind of show you guys some numbers. You guys are gonna love this one. One of my favorite, honestly, I put a lot of deals together over the years. One of my favorite ones by far. So we ended up buying this for $2.375 million. And if you guys are looking at this, you're probably like, holy cow, this is a lot of data. I'll break this down simply, but these are just, when I do underwriting, I like to show a low case, a base case, and a high case. And this one actually has a fourth case because, again, this is a whole nother conversation for another day, but what we do on a lot of our multifamilies is we'll take, like on this unit, on this building, we're taking about 5 of them initially. We're gonna make them short-term rentals or medium terms and furnish them to get higher rents. So I showed 4 different projections from my investors than when we're trying to look at this deal. And also this is how I was underwriting the deal, trying to figure out if it was a good deal and how I wanted to structure the investors. So anyway, we bought it for $2.375 million, but here's the best part. The seller I was like, how much money do I need to give you down? Like, I got to keep my down payment low because there's a lot of work to go here. I was like, could I pay you over time? And she's like, yeah, I think that could work, Casey. So what we did is $250,000 down. So roughly 10% down, but she carried the rest at 5% interest only. So really good terms. You're not getting those terms at a bank, right? Again, I know some of you guys maybe are, and I've done some deals where you got 0% for 30 years or some crazy stuff like that, right? But this lady, she did want to get her money and it worked out really good for me. So this is the seller carry loan. What I did is I went out and raised private money loan of 1.5. It's actually 1.7 million total is what we raised. So this is going to fund the rehab. So what I did is I actually used a fund. So I have Bighorn Capital Fund is my fund that it's a fund of funds where I'm able to raise money for different projects. So I brought in accredited investors and raised 1.7 million to go and fund both the purchase price, the 250, plus the rehab. Because guys, there was only 15 out of 45 units that were rented. We're renovating like, oh man, I can show you it right here. This has kind of been the breakdown. Let me just show you kind of the progress in a quick little snapshot. I want to show you guys kind of how it's progressed. Here we go. Okay, so when we took it over, we needed to renovate 30 different units, right? That was as of 6/21 of this year, so back in June. And this was our update when we did one in August, and this is one we did last week. So as of last week, we've renovated 14 of these units. There's 4 of them we're kind of right in the middle of, and we have 9 more still to go. And then we'll be all complete with this. And we've been able to move up vacancy from 33% to 46, right? So eventually we'll fill this up. We did another 65 unit, which we're literally, it's it's kind of cool. You do these in phases, right? Like our 65 unit we did about a year and a half ago. That one's almost 100% occupied and we're still finishing up a couple units. This one came last June. And now this is the one we're hoping that I'm going to show you in a second is going to be the one hopefully we jump to after that. So let me show you guys. We could dive a lot deeper into this. You know what, Clint? Do you mind going on and sharing them? You can get this off our Bighorn Capital website, Clint, but can you share them the video where I break down the underwriting of this? Because guys, I literally go through this for like 50 minutes and I break down exactly how we underwrote this deal, the interest rate, the projections, how we're going to go refinance when we get done with this. Because the strategy here is because the seller carried me and I'm using private money, and because we bought it so cheap, what we're going to do is once we fix it up and stabilize it, then we're going to be able to go to a bank and refinance it. And I projected all those based on rates and a 30-year fixed and going through different types of debt instruments. And then we kind of show you guys the cash flow on the back end. So it's a really cool deal. Clint's going to hopefully pop that into the comments here and you guys can go watch that. What I do, guys, is I would make sure that link is going to go away. So I would open it right away and save it. And then if you guys are really interested in multifamily investing, you can go back and watch this replay, but I would go watch that one because it's really going to break this down. But I wanted to show you this one because this is one that we've actually done and give you a feel for like what a completed one looks like. And then we can start to talk about, hey, what's it look like when you're first starting? Any questions so far, guys? So Sandeep, we did this on our 63 unit where we renovated a ton of units, and then we're doing actually eight of those 63. It's actually 66 now because we bought a couple more. It's a weird thing where there's an HOA, but 8 out of 66 are short-term rentals, short or medium term. So we've already kind of proven the concept there. And I don't know, we've just found in our markets, people love having furnished units, especially companies and different corporations, and they'll pay like double the rent. So I've got another video where we kind of talk about that strategy, but it's been really good to us. Where did I find it? So I believe this one came through direct mail. We have a specific multifamily list that we market to, and that's where this lead came from. And why the reason it's ironic or worth noting is Ashley, who's on this call. Ashley's actually been working our multifamily list and helping call it. So if you guys remember at the beginning of the call, I talked about us giving you guys lists to work. Well, this is one of the lists that Ashley's actually working. So there's other lists like that. If there's other people who want to work on the multifamily, I encourage you guys to go to problemstoprofits.com and you can sign up for our cold calling list. So anyway, that's how we found the deal. I'm going to go make sure I do some of these other questions. Yeah, how long am I planning to keep it? So this one, I'm planning to keep this one for a while, but as far as for the investors, I have up to 48 months to be able to refinance them and get them out. So we're actually paying 15% to the investor. I don't think I mentioned that yet, which is pretty aggressive. We typically are around 10 to 12% is what we pay our private money lenders. But on this one, it was a larger deal. And honestly, there was just more money in the deal. So we wanted to make it more incentivizing for our investors. And yeah, so we're paying 15% and we pay it monthly, interest only monthly. So all our investors every month, they get a check for if they put in 100,000, they're getting 15% of 100K every month, right? Breaking up monthly. The other thing I'm going to say, guys, is this is actually the other reason I want to bring this up is this deal. We're actually doing the final $500,000 raise for this fund. So I'm probably going too deep, but I know a lot of you guys like hearing this. What we did is we had to raise 1.7 million, right? When I closed, technically I only needed 250,000 to close it, right? To give to the seller. And then we actually did 500,000 to start because I wanted to get the construction off the ground. So initially of that 1.7 million, on June 21st, we raised 500K through our fund. But what we've been doing is raising in stages. So we did another 500K roughly, or maybe it's like 700 in July, in August. And now we're going to raise the final 500,000 because as I showed you guys those updates, and I could show you guys, you know what, Clint, I'm just thinking of other links. We should share them the investor update we did. This was last Thursday, and I showed you guys the slides a second ago, right here. I actually went through this with our investors, so I'd be happy if you guys are interested to see how we do multifamily, or if you're just interested in being an investor, go check out this YouTube video Clint's gonna share. So the last phase now, I mentioned I raised 500K to start, and then we did about another 7K in the middle. Now we're raising the last 500,000. So it's actually still open. We reached out to our current investors. They took a good chunk of it, but there's a few openings. So if anybody's an accredited investor, our minimum's 50,000. So if anybody is interested, I would click that link on YouTube that Clint's about to share, and you guys can go check that out. But anyway, I want to focus on showing you guys the numbers so you guys can ultimately do a deal like this yourselves. So I think a long way of answering Tiffany's question. So my plan is to refinance those investors, and my goal is to do this in 12 to 24 months. Again, like I said, I have up to 48 months per my documents, but I'm going to be able to refinance, keep the asset, and pay all my investors back. And the cool thing about that is when I pay them all back after I've been paying them 15%, they're going to be like, all right, where's the next deal? Let's do another one. So a really cool strategy. Like Sandy made a comment about our kind of cash flow cases, the high, medium, and the low. Cool. I think that is it. Cool. And then some other cold callers. Let me scroll to the very bottom. Make sure I answered all these. Appreciate Clint sharing some of these. Okay, ARV, that's a good one. And then warming up 3 or more on the list. All right, good. And Ashley, look at Ashley still working the cold calling leads. So keep it up, Ashley. Great job. All right, guys, let me go back to the underwriting and show you that. So, and again, I go through this on this call because your ARV is so important on these, and I'm going to show you on the next deal as well. But let me show you where I track that on this sheet. So what I did is I based this on a cap rate. So multifamily, guys, is evaluated. This might be simple, but this is like a fundamental thing you got to understand for multifamily. So this is the evaluation of this little table here is the value of the property, the ARV, once it's stabilized based on income. Because again, a cap rate is simply, I'll show you the calculation, but it's basically take your cash flow or the net operating income. So how much, this assume there's no debt on the property, right? Let's say that we own the property free and clear. We take all of our income and all of our expenses, and that gets you your net operating income. So that number, you divide that by a cap rate, and that gives you an evaluation. And that's as opposed to like, if you're buying a single family house or doing a flip, it's evaluated based on the comparables. Multifamily is based on the income, which is honestly one of the reasons I love multifamily. Multifamily people know this, right? But the reason why multifamily is great is you can control the value in a way, because if you drive up the income, you increase the value. So anyway, that's what I did on this table here to kind of show you guys or answer your question on how do we figure out the evaluation. But guys, there's just a lot of different scenarios, and I like to project it in multiple ways. And you guys could probably see I'm a math guy at this point. But again, you can see my low, base, high in my SDR case. And then I ran that based on a cap rate, right? So I think our cap rates in Wyoming based on this asset are going to be somewhere in this kind of area. In our area, in Salt Lake City, in like northern Colorado, even parts of Wyoming, you're starting to see 5 and 6 cap rates. And I know some of you guys who maybe live in Austin or other Atlanta, other hot markets, multifamily is trading sometimes as low as a 5.5, 5, even lower cap rates, right? So I wanted to kind of show, but the lower the cap rate, the higher the value of the property, right? But cap rate is something you really can't control. The market dictates the cap rate and also the condition of the property and some other things. But I don't want to go too deep on multifamily, but I want to show you guys the fundamentals of multifamily, but I want to show you guys how we run the numbers. Good question so far, though. Hopefully that answers it. So I think the quick answer to that question is, I think our value is going to be somewhere in this range, right? But here's what's really cool is on this deal, we're already hitting our high projections, right? Like for example, I was saying, actually I don't show it here. I have a different tab. So this is where I feed in all the rents, right? So again, I have a low rent roll. I have a base case, a high, and an STR. This literally breaks down all 45 units and how much rent I think I'm going to get on each unit. Anyway, but that all feeds into the underwriting and helps us kind of project our rents. What other questions before I go into the next deal? Yes, good question. Gilbert, how do you get the cap rate? Let's think about selling a single family house and how that's evaluated. Ultimately the market dictates that, right? You're going to look at all the comparables to figure out, okay, I've got a 3.2, 2,000 square foot, 1-car garage. All the comps at that property are $200 a square foot, right? That's typically how you underwrite. A lot of people underwrite single family. Well, you're really doing the same thing on a cap rate, right? They're going to say, okay, for this type of multifamily built in this year in this city, instead of a price per square foot, they're going to give you a cap rate based on that, right? So the cap rate, I would kind of compare it to $1 per square foot. But again, the cap rate is also, it accounts for a lot of different things, as I mentioned. The area, the condition of the property, like deferred maintenance. Is it an A-class property? A-class properties typically get a lower cap rate because they're higher end. I would argue they're more risky sometimes because if you're at the top of the market and things correct, there's nobody to drop to you, but they're typically more desirable. Therefore, they get a lower cap rate, right? Like, for example, in Austin, Texas, high-end A-class multifamily, it might be selling at a 3.5% cap rate. But again, the market will dictate that. Cool. There you go. I'm just reading. Mike's got a great question. So getting into multifamily, however, it seems that it would require establishing a fund as you have? Is there a training somewhere on how to go through that process, or do you recommend a smaller deals to establish credibility? Man, Mike, that is an awesome question. I could answer that for like 30 minutes based on what we've gone through. I would say for you guys trying to do multifamily, I would partner up with somebody for sure. I would be the one finding the deal or have a sponsor or really partner up, right? Because raising the money it's a whole nother animal. Like I love doing these calls, guys, but it's definitely like my day is so jammed. Like this one of I bring that up because I love doing these calls, right? But a lot of my day is spent either raising money or doing marketing, ultimately, because the raising money thing is a whole job in itself. I really recommend you guys partnering up with, because there's people who do this all day, every day that raise money, and I would partner up with those guys. Because doing multifamily, I think the point Mike is making is multifamily and raising money, they're bigger deals, right? Like this one required $250,000 down plus like about $1.5 million of rehab. So not everybody's got a $1.7 million laying around, right? That's the barrier to entry here. But if you find the right partner, or if you could do a fund of funds where somebody else goes and raises the money, but a lot of different options. If you want to organically do it like I did it by doing single family deals just like you guys, hustling, doing fix and flips. And on a bunch of my fix and flips, I always use private money lenders. Not always, but often I would try to bring in a private money lender. And that helped me build a track record to where now, actually, guess what I do? Here's a really cool best practice. If you want to raise money long-term, I can even just show you. Let me show you guys this really quick, just because that's such a good question. If I go to my track record, I started doing this, and I would encourage you guys to do this right now. Like if you've done one deal or 5 or 10 or 20 deals, start this. I basically started keeping track of every single deal that we've done. And I put the address, I put the photos, I make a little one pager, and then I put some info on like when did we buy it, what did we sell it for? And the last thing is I put in who was our I don't say their names, but I say, did we have a lender or a partner? And how much did they invest? What was their return, right? But this is how I built up the credibility, right? Is I did so many of these deals, but I started tracking them, guys, because one of my mentors that raises a lot of money, he's like, if you can't prove on your track record and show, like Pace talks about this all the time. He's like, I'll show you my settlement statement, right? Like this spreadsheet literally has links to the settlement statement. If you go in here, you can see my closing statements, right? So I would encourage you guys, if you do want to raise money and start to grow, keep track of every single deals, keep track of the basic information, keep track of the closing statements electronically and the photos, right? Because now when I'm having a conversation with somebody who wants to invest, I can just point into this document and be like, hey, go look at the other. I mean, I've got 125 deals on this spreadsheet that we've used private money lenders on. Not all of them, but a lot of them we've used private money lenders on. Good questions, guys. All right, let me make sure I got them all. Another thing I forgot, Mike and everybody else, if you are thinking about how to trade up is, using 1031s. I had a small, and it's really knowing what market is performing the best for you guys. So I had a small portfolio in Dallas-Fort Worth about 7-8 years ago. And spent about 4 years ago, I sold that because I wasn't getting as good a return as I was in Wyoming. So I sold like 4 properties off and bought a 14 unit and a 4-plex in Wyoming and did a 1031 exchange. So I was able to defer the taxes. And that also helped me to kind of that was the first big step for me, guys. If you're wondering like, how did I go from just like you guys doing an novation or a wholesale deal to having 250 units, it was that portfolio, like 4 or 5 properties. I mean, I had other stuff, but like I rolled that to a 14 unit. And then from there, I got the track record to go buy this 66 unit I told you about. And then the year later, I did this 45 unit. And then now I keep stacking them, right? And each time, but I guess the point is, guys, I wasn't going to go there today, or hadn't planned to go there, but document and just keep track of all your deals and take photos, share it on social media. If that's what if you have ambitions to go into multifamily and be able to raise money, I would start doing that now. Yes. Okay, Cheryl, good question. So this one is for accredited investors only. That's the only thing is when you go pick your fund, you can do 2 of them. I have a flexible fund that allows me to do multiple deals under the same structure. It like you hear about, everybody talks about fund of funds. That's what I have. But you have to pick accredited or not accredited. So I picked accredited so we can do marketing. But here's the thing, guys. If you guys are interested, again, go to problems.profits.com. One of the last links is to be, because I still have unaccredited people that are private money lenders for me. They just can't be involved in my fund. So if you guys are not accredited, please do reach out, because I'm always looking for private money lenders. Cool. And then we got several capital raisers. I like it, man. This is good. That was one of my favorite parts when I first joined Sub 2, is like, there were capital raisers. There were people finding deals. I mean, everything you could find it. So this is kind of cool how this call is going today. But anyway, if there's any sheets that I haven't shared with you guys today, I'm going to put my Instagram really quick. Guys, send me a direct message on Instagram and I'll share any of these Google Sheets with you guys. All right. So kind of a good deep dive. I'm going to transition out of this multifamily. Again, Clint, let's make sure we share. I'm just going to go to my website too, so you guys can see it if you're ever going to go find it. If you go to our Lilac Way, if you go to our offerings, we talk about this one, the Lilac Way one. But I wanted to show you guys the deep dive on the underwriting. So I want to make sure we get that link. Make sure, oh yeah, I think it's in. If you really want to dive deep into this one, this is a really good one. Here it is. Here's my webinars, Lilac Way. I'm just going to pop this into the chat for you guys. So if you guys do want to go deeper, you can. Now, who's ready to get into a new one and go see what it looks like to go from, like, I showed you what it looks like to do a big one. Now let's go show you actually how to do one from the start. That sound good? All right, let me pull up my underwriting here. So this one is very unique as I'm pulling it up. It was a hotel in Wheatland, Wyoming. We got a call. The cool thing is this lead, I know a lot of questions, somebody asked it earlier, is how did you find the lead, right? Once you've done enough deals, the nice thing is this is not the first time, but one of the times where a broker brought us a great deal. He's like, hey, this is a big project. I think your crew is probably capable of doing it. And this was actually brought to me by a high-level investor himself. And he just like, I don't have the crews to do this. So we're literally thinking about taking that same crew in Houston that's been crushing it for us there in Evanston, that last deal. When they finish that one, we're thinking about moving them down to this deal. There's two different scenarios, and I'm going to show you both of them, right? We could make 11 studios with 8 one-bedroom apartments. So this is kind of showing you that, right? And there's also just like a 4-bedroom, 2-bath building right next to it. The other thing is, I could, if I just kept this as the hotel, I could do 28 studios, right? So I ran both scenarios here to kind of see which one was most profitable. And I guess that's kind of where I'll start, guys. So what I did is, I wanted to simplify this a little bit today and not do 4 different scenarios, guys, but I did like a medium scenario where, okay, you know what? I often like to call this, our target rents, right? And then this is typically what I call like our stretch case. This is what we're going to shoot for. And more times than not, we hit this, but I always want to articulate that to an investor, or I also want to like kind of stress test our model to make sure it works. So what I did here is, okay, for 1-bedroom studio in this market, we're going to get $650 for a target, but maybe we could get $850. So again, this is driven by the market, right? If you guys are in some of your markets, you're probably getting 3 times this, but in little town Wyoming, this is all we get. All right. But check out the numbers. So there's 11 of these units. So I basically, all this is doing is multiplying those two together, right? Now I looked at, what about 1-bedrooms? 1-bedrooms, I think, could go for $900 conservatively, and the stretch case would be $1,050, right? So I figured out, okay, we got 8 of those. Let's add that together. Now for that little apartment that's attached to it, I'm guessing $1,500 to $1,800. So if you add all that together, this is how much it grosses per month. And then this is how much per year, right? 2 scenarios. Now we got to figure out our expenses, right? So we just figured out the top line, right? What's our revenue? Now we got to go project expenses. And this, guys, I think can make or break any multifamily deal and make or break how you do your underwriting. You got to nail this down. And this could be the most difficult. This is a little bit different. Property management, I would typically go lower, but because it's going to be a short-term rental, that's why I went down to 10%. I typically do 7.5%. You could go as low as 5. I mean, obviously, if you self-manage it, which we do, it might be close to 0, but I always in multifamily build in the property management fee, because when you go to sell it, they're gonna use a property management fee, so you got to have it in there. I put in capital expenditures. So guys, these are just percentages, right? Out of 100. And then the other thing was vacancy. So typically in our markets, we go with like 5 to 10% vacancy because we don't have much. Now, because this is a furnished rental and it's going to have like short-term stays, we're expecting to have more vacancy, right? It's not going to be I'm not making this an Airbnb, right? And if it was Airbnb, these rents would be a lot higher, but I'm more looking like month-to-month people. People are going to stay for 30 days at a time. But that's why I wanted to put a higher vacancy number. Now, expenses I got from the sellers, right? This is what I did up here, right? I'm like, okay, I'll come back to the debt service in a second, but here's the yearly taxes, $3,738 a year for taxes. If you guys have heard me talk about how low taxes are in Wyoming, there's your proof. Like literally, we looked it up online, $3,700 for the year for this for 28 units. If that doesn't blow your mind, I don't know what will. Insurance, we're looking at about $11,000 a year, which honestly, I think that might be a little bit higher. Typically our insurance is closer to our tax number. That was like a conservative bid. Or you know what? I think that's what they were paying, but we're hoping we can get that lower. This is their electric bills, their water bills, gas bills. And then I started to factor in some other expenses, like if I used a private money lender, and then the debt service, right? I'll come back to the debt service in a second as far as the creative part of it, because I want to just simply look at this like, what would this property be worth without the debt? That's how you figure out the value of the property, right? Is you take out the debt service, you figure out the net operating income. So that's right here. This is the cash flow after debt service. But here's the cap rate, guys. So all I'm doing is I'm taking the rent, the gross, all the income, right? Minus all my expenses. I divided that by my price, right? So I wanted to figure out, what price am I buying this at? So I wanted to figure out, so my all-in cost, I'm estimating putting $500K into it, and then plus the purchase price being around $559,000, which is the loan balance. So I'm thinking I'm going to put about $1 million into this roughly. Easy numbers, I'm putting $1 million in. So basically all I did here is I figured out, okay, this is my net operating income, which is my income minus my expenses. Divide that by the purchase price. That gives me a percentage, right? So this would be the cap rate, I mean, after I fixed it up, right? And I don't know what you guys know about cap rates, but if you're getting a 15% cap rate, that is phenomenal. If you can find 10% cap rates today, people are very, very excited. And that's actually why I did this. I said, okay, well, let's say that when we go to refinance this, it sells at a 10 cap rate. And if you guys remember to my first example, that market I was saying was around 7 to 8% cap rate. I'm being a little bit more conservative on this one because it's a smaller town. I'm like, all right, because it's a smaller town, let's use a 10% cap rate. So this would be the value of the property once I stabilized it, right? Here is my ARV. And then I wanted to say, okay, well, what would the ARV be if I go to refinance this thing down the road, or of the value, right? So this is based on a 10% cap rate. What would my loan amount be? So here's, guys, all I did here is I basically took, what is my total cost divided by the value? I would be at 63% LTV. I bet you guys can guess why I want that number. I want that number to figure out, can I go and refinance and get all my money back, right? I want to be able to pay back the seller. I want to be able to pay back my private money lender and hold the asset. So if I'm at 63%, I should be able to get a loan for that and get all my money back, right? If I hit my stretch case, I'm at like 50%. So if this one happens, I'm probably getting some of my money back, which is, man, that's the best ones. When you go, you find it, you fix it up, you refinance, and you get money back. But again, I'm not going to plan for that. I'm going to plan for the more conservative one. Guys, that is the cash flow really quick. But any questions on kind of the underwriting before I get into the debt side of it and how we're going to structure it? Yes. Okay. Tiffany asked how big my team is. Great question. So I have a property management team who manages 250 units, which consists of my COO. He's managing them. We're actually working on promoting somebody to a property manager, that level, but we have like 3 to 4 virtual assistants that are managing our rental portfolio. And they report, like I said, we're working on hiring that person. If anybody knows a property manager wants to move to Wyoming, let me know. Love to hire them. But we're going to have a local Wyoming property manager, but we do it all virtual, guys. I live in Houston. My COO lives in Dallas, and all our VAs are across the world, and we're able to coordinate with our contractors, which whole nother conversation. If you guys are interested in how I do that, I'd go check out my YouTube channel. I talk about it quite a bit. And yeah, and you're right. I think maybe, Tiffany, you're probably talking about like the short-term, long-term, right? On this property, I'm definitely going to want to have, with 28 units, I'm going to want to have a on-site person. My 66 unit, we have somebody on site. Same thing with my 45 unit. And that's the beauty of these multifamilies, is you can afford to have somebody on site. Make sure I got all these questions answered. All right, guys, we're about to call them. So before we call them, I want you guys to get inside of my mind and think about how I'm thinking about this, okay? So when I talked to this seller, originally I was told that they were asking about $500,000. And yes, again, you heard that right, 28 units, a full hotel for $500,000. And so when I first heard that too, I'm like, whoa, wait, did you say 500,000? And yeah, he's like, yep, I said 500,000, Casey. I'm like, okay, I'm interested. So we started diving deep. And what I found was they have a loan on it, right? Because you guys know me, right? And hopefully this whole community is like, hey, I wonder if they have a loan. Could I take over their loan, right? Even though it's a screaming deal potentially to just buy it outright with cash, like could we seller finance? So as I was talking to, his name is Jordan, I'm like, Jordan, would we be able to assume your loan? He's like, yeah. He's like, the problem is we owe more than what I'm willing to sell it for. So their balance is $559,000. And he's like, Casey, I'll be honest with you. Like, we're ready to be done. This is a deal with me and my partners, and we've got other bigger fish to fry, and we don't want to deal with this one. He's like, we would probably bring money to closing just to get out of it. He's like, we're prepared to do that. And I was like, whoa, okay. I was like, hold on, Jordan, why don't you send me your loan information? Let me see if I can assume this loan and keep it in place. So guys, this is what I'm thinking. When I call Jordan today, I'm going to say, hey, Jordan, well, let me show you guys really quick. So the loan is 6.85%. This is the current balance. This is the original balance. Their payment is $3,900 a month. This is what they're paying currently, right? But we're going to need to put a lot of money into it. This is how I started to calculate my cash on cash return, or my cash flow, right? But let's show you guys that really quick. I'm happy to share this spreadsheet with anybody who wants to dive deeper, or I'm assuming a lot of you guys are going to want to go back to the recording and kind of see how I'm framing this up. But let me show you how the debt service comes into play. So that's why I kind of put down here my total expenses, which is I'm adding in my debt service, tax, insurance, all these things. That is a total of $157,000, right? Did I put in, let me make sure I put in my private money loan. Yes, I did. So guys, the other thing I did was I wanted to figure out, all right, put yourself in my shoes. Because I know a lot of you guys are finding deals, but you're like, how in the heck am I going to come up with $500,000 to go rehab this? And a bank is probably not going to want to take on this project right now because half the units are rented, right? I mean, some banks will, but you're going to need to have like a cosigner with a huge balance sheet, which is can be problematic in itself. So what I do is I say, okay, you know what? What if I could raise $500,000 and pay my investors 15%, just like I did on my last deal? How would that look? How would that cash flow when I'm all done? So that's why I put this into my expenses. And I said, you know what? If I pay the existing loan, if I raise $500,000 from my investors at 15%, I pay all my expenses. That's what feeds down in here. This is how I thought of it. So now I'm like down here, this is all the income from the property right here, $322,000. And then I took out my property management, my CapEx, vacancy. Then I took in, this is the number from above, right? See this 157? That's all I did here. I just took that number with all my debt and I said, okay, can I still cash flow? So when you take all that out, I could still pay my private money lender 15% and still make $44,000 a year based on this projection. If I hit my high projection, I could make almost $100,000 a year. So that's why I got super excited on this deal, right? So I could still pay the private money lender. But what I want to do though, just like my last deal, is I don't want to pay somebody 15% forever. And most of my private money lenders don't want to be on a deal. Oh, I take that back. There's probably quite a few private money lenders out there that would be happy to just make 15% year over year, every year, right? But I want to refinance, right? I want to get better cash flow. So that was the final number I did, was what is my cash flow after my refi? So I have this little table up here, which is, let's say in today's rates, it's still really high and I got to pay 7.5% on my loan. I'm talking about my refi, and like, let's say 2 years from now, I'm ready to refinance and this is all stabilized. Rates should be lower by then, hopefully, but let's say they're not. And then I get a 25-year to amortization. I said, this was my loan amount, right? I just wanted to get a loan amount enough to cover, if you notice this number, this is the total cost of the project, right? I just want to be able to get all my money back and keep the asset. Based on that, my mortgage payment would be $78.25. What I did was, this is what I'm currently planning to pay in debt. And this 10,000 number, guys, this is just adding the debt service on the current loan plus my private money lender at 15%. If I lost anybody, you guys feel free to ask questions. But that's what I'm currently paying. So I said, well, you know what? If that's my current debt service, how much savings would I have once I'm paying like 7.5%? Over 25 years. And literally the savings per year was like 28 grand. So what I did is I just added that bound here to figure out this is my cash flow after the refi. So my thought is, if this all goes according to plan and I refinance in 2 years, say I'll pay all my private money lenders back, I'll pay off the loan and I'll keep it. And this would be my cash flow with no money in the deal, right? And I know this is exciting, maybe seem far-fetched, but we've done this on a couple deals, and I don't know, when you have the teams and the processes, it can be done. Hopefully I'm not just overwhelming you guys, maybe inspiring you of what you could do, but all this is fundamental and basic, right? To where this same strategy, I know these are bigger numbers, a lot more stuff happening. This is the same underwriting, guys, I do on every single every little flip I do, or every little rental property. The same numbers could all be in there. It's just a lot simpler because you don't have to go figure out expenses for 28 different units, right? Any questions before I call this seller and you guys get to hear me negotiate? Cool. Other than you guys like the deal. All right, cool. This is why I like Wyoming, by the way. Small plug for Wyoming. This is like, I always tell people, like, this is why I live in Houston and don't buy here, because it's so competitive. Up in Wyoming, there's not enough contractors, there's not enough investors, but pretty soon I'm gonna have a sub-2 army up in Wyoming. Okay, one other questions. How do you get on your team? Ooh, I like it. Tiffany, I like what you're thinking. Raising money. So my niche is to raise money from oil and gas people. I worked for Shell for 10 years. I would love to connect with other people who have other niches to go raise money. That's the beauty of this community. Ooh, if you bought this deal. Yeah, Albie, I definitely would consider it. You definitely want a team though. That's what makes this one unique and what allows me to buy this. The reason why I'm able to get these deals is there's not a whole lot of competition. There's not a whole lot of people that can come in and take on all this construction in a small market, do the property management, do it all together, right? We've been able to build out our teams in this market, and that's what allows us to do it. So Jodakai, is it Jodakai? I sent you a message. I wanted to make sure I pronounced your name right, but yeah, Jodakai, yes, good question. So Jodakai asked a question, aren't commercial deals on an ARMs? So what he means is an adjustable rate mortgage. So yes, I've done both, right? My multifamily in the 66 units I told you guys about, I got that on a 5-year fixed, and then it goes adjustable after that. But the cool thing is when you guys go through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, it's actually called agency debt. You can get better terms, right? I didn't put that on this one. This would be more of an adjustable rate one, and that's what these terms are at. Guys, the terms, this was based on an agency debt loan, right? Backed by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, basically a government-backed loan. They're doing even in today's market, it's around 6.5. It might not be 6. Well, you know what? It might be now that they've dropped rates, but it's like 6.25, 30-year amortization. Like when you get into these big multifamilies, this is another thing that'll blow your mind. You could start to get like really good financing again versus if you're going from you get that when you're doing single families in your primary residence. But when you start to go in like 4plexes and 5plexes, 10plexes, you don't get that special debt. But when you get big enough into these millions of dollars, you can actually go back to the government or get government-backed loans that have even better terms and have longer amortization. So it just helps your cash flow. Guys, I've gone way too deep on this, but hopefully this is bringing you guys value, and hopefully this call is going to do this as well. Thanks, Caden. Caden shared my Instagram. You're right, Jake. This is about the cost of a single family. You probably couldn't even get a single family house for $500,000 in Maui. But anyway. All right, guys. So before I call him, one last thing. Hopefully he still answers. I got way too long-winded on that. Because I'm thinking about this guy owes $559,000. So this is what I mentioned earlier. I want to kind of show you what I'm thinking in my head. If he owes $559 and he already told me all he wants is $500,000 and he's willing to bring cash to closing, I'm like, well, how can I leverage that to get me even better terms, right? I can't change these loan terms, but what I could do, and what I'm going to pitch him is, I know this guy, he's got a vast network. So what I'm going to try to pitch him is, hey, and he might not go for it, but you're going to hear me pitch it today. I'm going to say, hey, what if I don't ask you to come to closing with any money, but your team or your guys, you fund the rehab, and then maybe I can get better than 15%. Maybe I can get them to fund me $500K to fix this thing up for 24 months. And then you don't have to bring money to closing. Then I don't have to go raise any money, right? I could use all my private money lenders on another deal. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I got to be careful, right? Because if he's already offering, really what I think it's going to come down to is a blend of that. Maybe they're going to maybe they're going to lend me some money. I don't know if anybody's ever, did you guys catch that though? Typically on a sub-2 deal, they've got equity or some sort of equity to where you're taking over their loan sub-2, and then they're going to carry you on the remaining equity. In this scenario, if he only owed $400,000, he could carry me on the last $100,000 to get to $500K, the asking price, right? But he owes more than the asking price. So as opposed to him bringing that money to closing, I'm going to say, you know what? Why don't you just finance me? So we'll see how that goes. He might say, heck no, we want no part of this deal anymore. And then if that's the case, maybe they just bring money to closing, and then that's just more cash that I can inject into the deal. You guys ready for me to call this seller? You guys have probably been waiting for the last hour. Let's do it though. Any questions before we go? Okay.
Hey Casey, how's it going?
Hey Jordan, good man. How about you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Sorry it took a while.
No, that's all right.
Looking at some we were still crunching numbers and talking underwriting and all that. So anyway,
Yeah, no problem.
thanks too for sending me all the stuff. You guys are right on top of it as far as.
Yeah, Grant is right on top of it.
Nice, man. What's Grant? Is he one of your partners or what's his role?
Yeah,
Sweet.
he's one of the partners.
Sweet, man. Okay. So I think I confirmed most of it. One small one, which I'm pretty sure I knew the answer to. When you sent me the schematic, like the 2-story part, it's the exact same footprint upstairs and downstairs, right? It's just a replica, essentially?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was basically, I had it as 11 studios and then 8 1-bedrooms. And then plus the, call it the office or the little apartment. That would be in it.
That's correct. And I think I had quoted you wrong when I first initially talked to you, and I hadn't seen that schematic in a while. So I apologize because I do think I said 2 bedrooms, which it's not really a 2-bedroom. It's a 1-bedroom or a studio, and that's all.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. We had even talked about it too when I walked at the property. I'm like, man, could we were thinking about how you could split those into 2 bedrooms because it'd be 1 big bedroom. With your experience in Wheatland, do you think you get rewarded much more for a 1-bedroom versus a 2-bedroom?
I don't think so necessarily. I mean, if you could do it, there is going to be an uptick in rent on that. We didn't think it was worth it. That's why we designed it that way. And I know we did talk about you could put 2 holes, cut 2 door holes in one side and make 2 bedrooms by basically putting a wall down the middle of the big room, like you're saying.
Yep.
So I know we did discuss that, and we decided it wasn't worth it. But that's not to say, I mean, I've only been wrong one time, and I'm not sure if that's it. So.
Got it. Only once.
No, I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit of a kind of up to you what your thoughts are. But our discussion kind of led us to say, let's do 1-bedrooms and studios, and then we'll have that apartment. I mean, our thought was to make the apartment kind of nice also, so that you could just rent and get full rent out of a nice 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, I just figured I'd ask because I know you guys got that other bigger one. Is there more demand for those or more demand for like, for example, Laramie, like people want to group up together and share split by the bedroom, but do you feel like it's a more 1-bedroom market?
It's been a mix. I mean, it's also kind of, I think that the 1-bedroom market is really good for the more temporary loaners from Texas coming up to work for 6 months, the individual men, which you seem to get quite a few of those. And then on our other apartments, you can get some of the traveling nurses and things like that that'll sign a full year lease.
Well, cool. Well, man, I wanted to throw something at you because I was trying to think of a way where you guys don't have to bring money to the table and if we could take over the loan. Well, I guess before that, I assume have you had a chance to talk to that small bank? If you haven't, no worries, we can.
We talked to Grant about this, and what we decided is that we know that it's not technically assumable. From their perspective, it's not assumable. So we would just have to do it. There's a couple of ways we could do it, but our thought is we just kind of do a wrap mortgage. And we can either just keep making the payment and you make the payment to us, or you just make the payment directly to the bank and we have an agreement on our end. If they call the note, what happens, all those types of things we agree on.
Yeah, I agree. We'd outline that ahead of time. Good.
Yeah.
Man, you just pitched it for me, Jordan. It's like, that is half the battle whenever I talk to somebody on creative finance. They're like, I'm trying to tell them like, hey, you could do this and these are the 3 different ways. And they're just like, anyway, it's nice when somebody else knows it. What I'm talking about.
A lot of people just don't think outside the box or even know that you can think outside the box on some of this stuff. And we've actually done a few route mortgages, which is pretty creative, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
We're excited.
So anyway, along those lines, like and this might be a long shot, man, but like if there was a scenario where you guys wouldn't have to bring as much or maybe no money to closing, because I remember talking to you like years ago that you raised a lot of capital, because I'm looking at, I got to finalize my numbers, right? We're still getting our projections of how much money we want to put in, but let's say, and I'm not saying this would be for 10 years, but maybe it's 2 years or something, but if you guys would carry like basically lend on the construction and wrap it all into one loan. And anyway, if we got favorable terms, maybe you wouldn't have to bring cash. And I totally get that your partners are also wanting out of it, but if there was a simple, clean structure to where what do you think about that? I mean, I could go get my own private money lenders, but I figured that might be a creative solution.
Okay, tell me your thoughts as far as like, so you guys, you'd borrow $650,000, which would mean $550 for the note that's there and then $100,000 more from us.
Yeah, but probably more than that. Yeah, it'd probably be, I got to finalize my rehab, but it'd be probably more than 100K.
Right.
Yeah, bingo. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you're tracking. Exactly. And then you would just, and honestly, I don't care where it comes from. You guys could all pony up together. You guys could bring in another private, you could be straight debt, right? And it would be structured as debt. And we could play with interest rate. I mean, I guess the variables we'd play with is interest rate plus the amount of cash you'd have to come to closing. I'm just, the only reason I'm throwing it out there is if I mean, I've got private money lenders on my other deals, but if I can save them for another deal and I could use you, because you guys are going to know, you guys know the asset, right?
Just going to try to be, I'm going to think out loud without having talked to, Grant is my partner still, and then the other two guys that are involved in this, they have kind of left. They're the ones that I told you had kind of not in the day-to-day. So I need to talk to them, obviously, but my initial thought is that would be almost that we would rather take, hopefully, you know, the smaller the cash hit, better, but then do the hard money, because it kind of drags this on, and those two partners would have to be involved with a creative deal for the next couple of years. I don't know if they want to do it. It's worth asking, but that's my initial thought. Is like, I don't know. Our hope was if we could get as close to that 550 as possible and not have to bring too much cash or any cash to the table, and then it's clean from there. We can assign the note to you and make it clean that way. That was more preferable, just because of our partnership situation. But that's not to say it's not worth asking and kind of seeing where we can go. But if I would venture to say, I'm guessing they would rather come to the table with 20 grand and not do that.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. But I'm also making stuff up as I go here.
Yeah. I kind of figured that was the case, but I just figured there might be some other variables with those guys, or maybe you had some other, or if there was, I don't know, like I said, a third party.
We borrow hard money all the time also. And then it just it's usually higher interest rate and all that. So if we're going to borrow the hard money, we need to at least break even on that. So you're paying them. Anyway, you know what I mean? It's just a little more messy that way. I like your thinking, and I'm not saying it's not possible, but I think it makes it trickier with the situation that we're in as partners.
Yeah, the most important one. I mean, I guess the good news is, which I think is a big deal on this one, at least on my side, is being able to keep that loan in place. Because if I just got to go fund the rehab, essentially, that helps.
That's it. Yeah, no, I understand. I like it.
That loan is termed through what would be
Grant's in here right now with us. He's talking. The loan is termed for a couple more years, right?
April of 2028.
Yeah, so there's 4 more years on that one.
Ooh, good to know. That was another question I had. So out of 0-4-28. Yeah, that was the main thing I wanted to bounce off you. So I think what I'll do is, the biggest thing is I'm just trying to get a feel for how much I'm going to still have to put into it. I mean, do you guys, that would be the only other thing. I don't want to you guys go dig up a bunch of stuff, but if it was handy, like, do you guys have any feel for what you guys have spent on some of the units that you did convert and they're now like performing?
I should be able to find that, yeah.
Yeah, anything you can help me there, because I'm going to still pull my own, but it's always good to see cross-check it.
The two-story was going to be a little bit different.
It was already designed yours.
Yeah, it already had some adjoining doors and things like that, so that's nice. But,
okay.
And it already has the PTAC too. The other ones we had not put PTAC in, so that was part of the more recent construction.
Okay.
The mini splits.
The mini splits. Okay.
So yeah, I can dig up something for you. I know we have that Stefan, the partner that's not in the day-to-day. He's the one that did all that work, and so I'll see if I can find what he has.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, see what you can find there, and then that's where I'm at, is I just got to finalize that, and then I've got most of my other numbers.
Want to just touch base early next week, and we can't keep taking steps forward here?
Yeah, I'm with you. That's exactly where I'm at. Let's do that. Cool, man. Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Casey.
Appreciate the time. You bet. See ya. Bye. All right, guys. So feel free. Now's a good time, but you guys can ask any questions you want on kind of how I was thinking and how kind of where we're going to go from here on this deal. So I think I'll give myself some feedback. After talking to him and even thinking about the value of them, I mean, okay, if I were maybe in some of your shoes where I haven't raised any private money, I would be pushing harder, be like, hey, Jordan, this deal only works as if you guys can figure out how to fund me. And I bet I could push him into it, right? But I'm also like, well, if I can go raise it at 15% and I've got a really clear path to be able to refinance and it still makes sense and pencils, I might as well. I mean, he clearly showed me his motivation, right? He would rather bring money, and he said bring 20,000, but he's kind of already told me they would sell it for 500. I could actually just fund 60,000 right off the bat that they would bring to closing for me taking on their loan. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, you guys are good point. Yeah, this guy Jordan's, man, he's I've just seen his name around. They own quite a few multifamilies in Wyoming and Colorado, so I'd heard of him, and yeah, he's pretty easy. You're right. If all the sellers were like that, holy cow, how easy would creative finance be? So if you're new to creative finance and you think all sellers are like that, you'll probably never hear one like that again. Cool, awesome. So yeah, sorry. Oh, CapEx. So good, Cynthia. Great question. CapEx expenses, how much are you going for? So yeah, that's why I've got this number here back on my spreadsheet of that 500,000. Without getting too much into detail in the project, I would say there's maybe 10 units that are like that are not rented whatsoever, and they need carpet, flooring, paint, they need a new kitchen, and they need to be furnished, right? So those would be but the nice thing he talked about, the P-Tech stuff, that's basically mini splits. So a lot of the HVAC's been done. There's also a roof. So anyway, that's why I kind of told him I got to go back to my underwriting and really figure out what this is all going to cost, because that's the biggest driver here to figure out if this works. Well, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of money and a lot of room to still fix all this stuff. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. And that's one of the hardest parts, guys, is I think there's two really hard parts of multifamily. And maybe three. It's knowing what you can rent it for, right? We talked about estimating that. It's knowing the expenses, and also knowing when a seller is like filling you full of crap and not showing you all the expenses. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt. You got to go uncover all the skeletons and figure out, wait, how much are they actually paying that's not being accounted for? And then the last piece is, how much money do I got to put into it? Can I accurately budget how much money it's going to cost me to put into this? But if you can nail those three down, you could crush it in multifamily. Yeah, one more, and raise money. That would be the last one. Small caveat. Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Owen. Yeah, you guys can kind of see my strategy, right? Like, and I've talked about this before, but it's all about matching tempo, right? And what I mean by matching tempo is, yeah, he's laid back. I'm laid back. I wasn't talking as fast as I was talking to you guys when I was underwriting, right? I was trying to stay slower, be more personable, use language like he is. I know he's an investor, so I also choose my vocabulary, right? There were a lot of words I used probably in that conversation I would not use with a normal seller, right? But we know him, right? I know he knows I know his vocabulary. Be very careful when you're negotiating and you start talking about novations and all these fancy words. Cool. Christopher, I'm going to send me a direct message on Instagram. And if you don't have Instagram, hit me up on Facebook. But just search my name and I will get you a link. I just want to clean this up before I share it with everybody, but I will happily share the underwriting. I'll share both of them, right, guys? I'm going to share the one that we've pretty much completed in Evanston, the 45 units, and then I'll share this one. This is not fancy though, guys. I could reshare it again, but guys, I literally just whipped this up the other day because to me, it's just a math equation. I'm just like, what's the money coming in? What's the money going out? And how do I estimate my debt service? And if you have all those things, you could put it together. So this is not a fancy template, but if anybody wants to work off of it, I'm happy to share. I've seen way more sophisticated, clean looking ones, but honestly, sometimes to me, they're just too confusing. And I spend more time trying to like figure out what this cell does, what that cell does. And I just like building it out on the fly sometimes. That's just me though. Okay. So if you're good question by Jason, if you are using a HELOC money to acquire properties, would you trade 7.25% for 9.6 rate lock to add an extra 130K to? Okay, Jason, man, I think I know what you're saying. So so you're saying you could keep your HELOC at 7.25, but if you I'm assuming you're going to refinance that loan and then pay down the HELOC and free up the HELOC to where you could have 130,000 to work with, but you got a higher rate. Man, that's a very specific question to your scenario. Different people have different appetites for debt and risk. I've gotten to where I'm at because I've used debt and used leverage. So my answer would be, yeah, as long as it cash flows, right? As long as you have good cushion and keep good liquidity with the 9.65 rate, if you could still cash flow it, I would absolutely do that because now you're free to go do the next deal. It's a great point. Man, Jason, 336 units in San Antonio by Lackland Air Force Base. Need to raise some funds. Yeah, Jason, let's connect, man. That's exciting. I know the exact area you're talking about is San Antonio. Seems like that's growing super fast. I like it. All right, any other questions, guys? If not, I want to move into making some calls. Other than my calls, I want to call your guys as sellers. That would top off a perfect problems to profit Zoom if I could go solve some other people's problems. But I'll keep answering questions until somebody sends me something. Really quick, I'm going to answer Chimney's question though. Do you have experience with ground up multifamily? So I was going to say no, but yes, unfortunately, I had a tear down a while back that was supposed to be a duplex we were going to remodel, and it turned into a tear down. So we built a threeplex, and we're actually looking at building that first asset I was talking about earlier, Chimney, that was like in Laramie, that we were talking about. We were doing some self-storage. We're actually looking at building we're looking at a lot of options. Maybe we're going to do manufactured housing or possibly multifamily. So yeah, I don't know. I've definitely been guilty of shiny object syndrome. So I'm cautious of that, but ground up multifamily is very, very enticing for me.